Some Newbury residents uneasy following a fatal shooting at a nightclub there. The National Cultural Foundation is promising more space for Pan in the city. And in sports, Weymouth Wales takes the BFA knockout crown. A fatal shooting at Newbury St. George entertainment spot early Sunday morning has left residents there feeling edgy. 31-year-old Kerry Bailey, alias Darkman of Kingsland Christchurch, died following the incident in which 3 others were injured. They were identified as Barry Quinby, 27, of Allingsland Bush Hall, St. Michael, Tanya Allen, 28, of Codrington Hill, St. Michael, who were both shot in the knees, and Dwayne Waltress, 31, of Kendall Hill, Christchurch, who was shot in the right thigh. Shane Seeley visited Newbury today, filed this report.
Chaos and panic hit this normally quiet community at Newbury St. George when gunmen stormed the weekly dub at Townman's Disco, and they shot and wounded 4 people. One of those succumbed to his injuries at the QEH yesterday afternoon. Now, a shooting at Townman's is no longer considered a rare occurrence by any means, and according to residents, this occurrence might be the final straw.
But this is about 3 weeks now that we was hearing this gunshots and thing every Sunday morning. 3 weeks. And I know I'm very disturbed about it because there's a lot of children in the area, and the houses are too close for that. On my part, I will close it because there's a life that's gone.
It ain't good no more. And people just hopping in and shooting here.
It's a close-knit neighborhood. And it was, to me, bare foolishness. Because if more people was in there, what would have happened? Then more people would hurt. It ain't really affect my children or nothing because everybody was sleeping. I probably was the only person that was up, and then they wake up my father, but otherwise it didn't really affect me nor nothing.
These bullet holes in the roof are just reminders of how dangerous it was that Sunday morning at Townman's Disco. The owner, Basil Small, better known as Townman, didn't want to go on camera to speak about the situation. He told BBC News it's an unfortunate incident and has made an appeal for the violence to end.
I feel that the young fellas need to behave themselves, you understand? I be mostly concerned about my neighbours, right? Place is alright, but if my neighbours don't feel good, I don't feel good neither. And I would like the man that normally doing foolishness to stop.
Over the next couple of days, Townman will have to decide whether or not he will continue to keep his weekly sessions. But whatever decision he makes, it will be done in the best interest of Newbury residents. Shane Seeley, CBC News.
Thanks, Shane. The Association of Public Transport Operators is asking for additional time to study a new concessionaire system and other proposed regulations for them going forward. That was one of the decisions taken by the public service vehicle operators at a meeting at the weekend at Combermere School. The PSV sector was asked by the Transport Authority to respond to the proposals by July the 15th, but members did not meet for some time until Sunday. Peter Thorne has the story.
The Association of Public Transport Operators appears to be facing as many roadblocks within its ranks as its drivers face on the roads. This as about 30 operators met to discuss the challenges facing the PSV sector and to try and respond to a July 15th deadline for draft new regulations proposed by the Transport Authority. That entity has instructed the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel to prepare these regulations in accordance with Section 31 of the Transport Authority Act of 2007. From the outset, Vice President of APTO, Judy Ford, indicated she had no interest in seeking re-election to the body or of becoming its president. Ms. Ford said she wants APTO to be active and to represent the PSV sector forcefully, especially dealing with the new concessionaire system.
You will have to pay those people who don't look like you to be allowed to work in this country. These same people who never ever went through the sweat and the tears that you went through will be given this on a platter.
During the discussions, there were some robust exchanges as PSV operators aired their concerns.
Don't say that the owner is responsible. No owner is responsible.
I know.
The government can stop all the nonsense with a stroke of a pen. If you come forward and if you get convict, take away the minibus license and level it right flat. That problem solved.
In the end, they decided to set up an interim committee to chart the way forward for the organization.
PV operators would like to ask Judy Ford to continue to represent us as the Vice President of APTO with regard to the restructuring of APTO's constitution and the organization so that we can continue in a legal format, legally be represented in a proper way.
This show of support persuaded Ms. Ford to accept chairmanship of the new interim committee, but she says it's no splinter group, but an initiative to try and restructure the body to meet the concerns and challenges of the PSV sector. She charged that APTO has been virtually silent for the past few months in the wake of deadlines to respond to the draft new regulations by July 15th and for the wearing of uniforms, which expired in June.
We cannot sit back and allow this to go to Parliament. And I'm saying to you, it doesn't matter if it's Mr. Lee, it's my mother or father. I could not agree to sit on a committee to look at a concessionaire to employ you people and take away your work, take away your livelihood, take away your future. I could not. So therefore, we will not agree. And this is nothing personal. I want you to understand that all the meetings that were kept and were called on the Association of Public Transport Operators were called by me.
However, President Morris Lee distanced himself from the meeting through a notice in the media, saying he knew nothing about any emergency general meeting of APTO. Peter Thorne, CBC News.
The National Insurance Fund is financially sound and has a reserve ratio of just over 7.5 years. This disclosure from Director Ian Carrington following a tour of the department by Minister of Social Security Dr. Esther Biosecure this afternoon. Peter Thorne again reports.
Dr. Esther Biosecure toured the NIS for the first time since taking over responsibility for Social Security following the June 15th cabinet reshuffle. She was accompanied by NIS Chairman Tony Marshall, her Permanent Secretary Martin Cox, and NIS Director Ian Carrington. Whilst visiting the NIS, Dr. Biosecure got a first-hand look at operations of the department. Following the tour, Dr. Biosecure met briefly with the board in the NIS boardroom. After the tour, NIS Director Ian Carrington told reporters the NIS has a reserve ratio of 7.5 years and funds of $3.47 billion up to the end of May 2011.
In essence, if we were to receive no investment income, nor any contributions, the current reserves will carry us for a period of 7.6 years. When we look at the demographics, and the demographics speaks to the aging of the population, the last actuarial review indicated that the fund was sound down to the year 2032.
Mr. Carrington says the next actuarial review of the NIS is due in 2012, adding that its investment income is carefully managed.
We seek not to have a situation where we have money sitting on the bank account that is earning absolutely no monies. You say it was 3.9. I say to you it was 3.7. In terms of the proportion that we can invest, the law essentially allows the National Insurance Board the latitude of investing all of that money, but the National Insurance Board would have put in place an investment policy guideline which essentially guides how that money is invested. And we take into consideration not only the returns to be derived, but we also take into consideration the risk that we are being faced.
The NIS has a staff of just over 260. Peter Thorne, CBC News.
Well, following that tour, the minister said she wants to see more people in the informal sector contributing to the national insurance scheme.
I want to see that more people understand the importance of contributing to national insurance. The benefits far outweigh the cost today. And I think more and more people need to realize that. I'm not sure the actual percentage of persons that actually contribute. I think around the world it is somewhere in the vicinity of 20 or 25% of the informal sector that would contribute, or that they estimate would contribute to national insurance and pension schemes. And I suspect in Barbados it probably is somewhere in that vicinity as well. And so we need to do better.
Dr. Biosecure wants the NIS to remain sound and work for Barbadians, noting that it is a vital institution in our lives and those of future generations.
And when we say informal sector, it isn't just the vendors and the hawkers and so on. We know that doctors and lawyers and accountants and other self-employed persons fall into that category as well, and many of them have not been fully convinced of the need to contribute to national insurance. But you know, as they get older, or when they get ill, hard times hit them, then they remember that there's national insurance, and that's when they want to see what is there for them.
Health Minister Donville Innes will meet with BAMP's members and the board of the QEH on Friday to discuss outstanding issues. These include employment contracts, the payment of gratuities and outstanding staff appointments. CBC News understands that the convening of that meeting came about after discussions with BAMP's President Carlos Chase and QEH Chairman Francis De Pisa. The meeting is set for 3 p.m. at the Ministry of Health. BAMP has called a meeting tomorrow for its members. The National Cultural Foundation is providing more space in Independence Square for the growing number of patrons attending PAN in the city. This was revealed by coordinator of the event, Karen Pestina, during the presentation of a check from sponsor RBC-RBTT. She says the number of Barbadians attending the PAN show has increased every year. That number was around 6,000 to 7,000 last year. Ms. Pestina says some new features will be introduced to PAN in the city this year, including performances from artists such as Red Plastic Bag and Biggie Irie. However, she says the NCF will not be looking to change the location from Independence Square anytime soon.
The reason for having 3 staging, which would be the barge and the 2, is to allow more space for the patrons. So as Mr. Charles said, I don't wonder if we are outgrowing, because Barbados is a big area, so we don't know what the future will hold. But we will be in the city, but we may have to have some floating stages. That's what you had said once, CEO. Somebody had mentioned about some floating stages once, but what happened at the NCF, we go into our meetings very early, so if we see what happens, different arrangements would be made. But Independence Square is such a perfect site for this event. I don't see us moving away from it. RBC-RBTT's Manager of Corporate Communications, Joseph Charles, says sponsors have also noticed an increase in the number of patrons attending the event.
As the sponsors, what we saw last year was a spilling over from the Independence Square into the road, and we saw the mobs all on the bridge, really trying to get a glimpse of the PAN. So perhaps when the NCF looks at it, they could make that decision. But I was just saying that based on observation from what I saw.
Well, hundreds on board, hundreds left on shore. The second Puff of Color cruise, hosted by the Chelsea Boys, was such a hit that many are calling on the National Cultural Foundation to make it a part of the crop over calendar. Lisa Lord reports.
It was indeed a colourful affair on board the Chelsea Boys' Puff of Colour cruise yesterday. The harbour master was completely sold out for the cruise, which started at 3 in the morning and ended at 7. With a maximum capacity of 750, an estimated 300 people were turned back. The choice of wear? Nothing that you needed to put on again, as you were either soaked, had coloured powder thrown on you, or if you were lucky, both. Spokesman for Chelsea Boys, Kirk Phillips, says the tickets for the cruise sold out in a matter of days. He thinks that the NCF should come on board to market the event, which in 2 years has already created a name for itself.
This is the second year for Puff of Color. The response to this cruise was overwhelming. As you can see, we sold out the MV Harbour Master in less than 2 weeks. And we have left over 300 persons on the dock wanting tickets. So next year I want each and everybody to get their tickets early. You never know, we might do 2 boats next year. Crop over, this is our thing. And I think the NCF needs to look at this event and market it with their calendar. This is one of the biggest events in crop over right now.
And the concept is one which patrons say they would support every year.
This is the best cruise ever. This is the best cruise for crop over, the best cruise in the world. I tell you, next year make sure you get your tickets early, make sure you come. NCF, you're going to make us a part of the crop over calendar.
We are controlling things. I got wanted to say without the stakeholders for crop over can't happen. That is all I have to say. This cruise should be on the crop over calendar 2012.
Lisa Lord, CBC News.
Well, thousands turned out for the Liat Socoholics Outrageous in Red show at Kensington Oval on Saturday night. And in keeping with the theme, many wore red to this event, which was headlined by Trinidadian soca stars Destra Garcia, Fayan Lyons and Bunji Garlin. There were also performances by several local acts, including Crossfire.